Hello, and welcome to the Festive Blog Hop hosted by Francis H. Powell. For the next several days, I will be doing a reading of Dolor and Shadow, starting on the 16th today. The last reading will take place on the 24th of December. In addition to the book reading of Dolor and Shadow, I will also be reading an excerpt from the websites of the featured authors. Today, we have Marlene Kallan, I believe. Yes, Marlene Kallan, whose website I will be doing a reading from. It will be a separate video from this one, so you can sit down through story time and then later come back for the excerpt on the featured author, or you can skip the reading altogether and just take a look at the featured author, customized however it is your schedule permits. So without further ado, I don't want to take up too much time. I'm hoping to keep the readings between 5 and 15 minutes max. So this is Dolor and Shadow, and I will be reading in consecutive order a chapter a day, approximately a few pages perhaps. I hope to have part 1 done by the time the reading ends, so it's the first part of the book that you'll be hearing, and they will be posted in my blog. If you did miss a reading, you can go ahead and take a look at the previous posts. This will be available probably indefinitely. I don't see me deleting this. So, and I'll go ahead and get started. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and skip the acknowledgments, dedication, and all that wonderful stuff. So, this is a fantasy, high fantasy, epic fantasy, in case you're wondering, and it is book 1 of Tales of the Drui by Dolor and Shadow. Prologue. How fare the gods? How fare the elves? All Jotunheim groans, the gods are at council. Loud roar the dwarves by the doors of stone, the masters of the rocks. Would you know yet more? The poetic Era 40th stanza. Think back to the oldest era your mind can fathom. Back beyond everything we can remember, when gods were still men who had not yet lived the deeds that would deify them. Gudrun's aged gold eyes peered from behind her curtain of long silver hair. Think back before the time when the Aesir and the Vanir were still men who had settled here on ancient earth ages before their war. Back when the earth was new, Kallan asked, looking up from the vellum scroll before her on the table. The tips of her tapered ears poked through the brown hair she had tied back to avoid the candle's flame. Was it? Shadows flickered over Gudrun's face and shelves of jarred things. All sorts of unusual jars of powders and exotic roots had been crammed into every available corner. Dried herbs hung from the crossbeams. The light from the candle and small hearth fire mingled and added a heavy thickness to the room that smelled of boiled heather and sage. The earth was still very old by the time the gods found it, Gudrun said. By then it was already ancient soil which stood beneath their feet. Can you see it, Kallan? The girl closed her eyes, an iridescent blue like the lapis stone, and thought back to the earliest memories she could recall, back before the great migration when the gods lived in the southern deserts and the land of rivers, back before the great war between the Aesir and the Vanir. I can, Kallan said. The old woman kept the dry sternness in her voice. These are the antiquated stories that predate the empires of men. We have studied the Vanir and their ways, their medicines and herbs. Now think of the gods of our gods, the gods so old that we have forgotten. The gods our gods once taught to their young, and think of their ancient stories and their myths, the legends they once revered because they themselves would become myth, and think of everything now lost to time. Kallan nodded. I see it. The Scythe is older still, Gudrun said, like veins that flowed from the great gap, spreading through all elements of the earth, stretching out, threading itself into the waters, the air, and earth. Kallan opened her eyes as she drew the connection to the tri-corner knot enclosed in a circle hanging from the chain on her neck. Gudrun smiled, confirming that Kallan's conclusion was correct. Your mother's pendant, she said, Notroinak, the three united. The Scythe itself fused itself to the elements until it lost itself inside the earth, becoming a part of it, flowing with the waters, churning with the soils, and riding on the wind through the air. The Scythe is still there, sleeping, waiting for us to remember. Kallan shifted forward in her seat. When the Vanir found the Scythe, they recognized it. In secret, they honed it and mastered it. They hoarded it, keeping it concealed from the Aesir. Sadness hovered in Gudrun's tone. Afraid the Aesir would learn of their treasure and exceed them in power, the Vanir refused to divulge their secrets. What happened to the Vanir? Kallan asked. Gudrun visibly fought back the bitter sting of tears. They died. Her voice was low. Doomed to be forgotten, and living only within the ancient stories now nearly extinct. Kallan bit the corner of her lip as if biting back a question. Deep within the earth, beyond the sea to the west, they met their end. The old woman continued. Some say they perished far beyond the westernmost reaches of the world where the beginning formed. There, where the Seid emerged from the life source and fused to the elements of the life itself. The Seid now resides dormant in all of us. However, for most of us it sleeps, available for the host to use, but never awakened, its keeper unaware of its presence. But don't think its power is lost, Gudrun said. Even dormant seed, ripped from its host, will destroy the lifeline that is formed around it. It lies sleeping within every man born to Midgard, just as the races of men have it. We elves have it. Elves, Kallan repeated. Elfar, Gudrun clarified, forgetting the word was foreign beyond the ocean isle where she had lived for the past 300 years. The Devaga, the Svaltafar, even the Liasafar, they have it, Kallan interrupted. King Tryggve? Gudrun nodded. King Tryggve and King Olaf. King Tryggve and King Eolf. The name of her father sharpened Kallan's attention. Father has it? Gudrun continued, not daring to encourage the princess's interruptions. As do the reindeer that migrate across the valleys of King Rom in the north, and the elk birds that fly across the southern realms of King Ogdi, the sea worms that swim, and the pines that grow tall in these lands. However, among us all, men and the three races of the Elfar, only a rare handful are still aware of its existence. Of those precious few, only some can waken it. Fewer still can wield it. After concluding her lecture, Gudrun spoke faster, more sternly, leaving behind the mysticism of the storyteller. To wield the Seid is to pull on the lifeline that is formed within the confines of your center. To master the Seid is to pull on the threads that have woven themselves within the elements. Find it! As if suddenly aware of the stuffy room, Kallan narrowed her eyes to better see the Seid that was somehow there, suspended in the air. This time, Gudrun's smile stretched across her wrinkled face. Start small, she said. The Seid around us has not yet conformed to the order of a path, and goes where the elements take it. Try to find the Seid within you, at your center. That is where it sleeps. That Seid will know you and be the first to obey. Slouching, Kallan nodded and closed her eyes, then changed her attention to the center of her body. Once you master your own Seid, you can reach out to the Seid in others. It won't be as willing to obey as your own, but it too has adapted to the confines of a living being. Kallan opened her eyes, eager to collect the knowledge that always seemed to pour out of Gudrun. Is it within the fire you summon? The old Seikona shook her head. Fire is not an element, but a reaction, like when the cook blends stews or when I mix spells. Like bubbling water or brewed tea? Exactly, Gudrun said. Fire is only present when another action brings it out, whereas soil, wind, and water are always there, maintaining a permanent state that defines the Seid. As she listed each element, Gudrun pointed to each point of the pendant hanging from Kallan's neck. As she finished, she traced her finger around the circle enveloping the knot. The elements don't require fuel. However, Seid is living. It is a life form made of pure energy. Compress enough Seid and it will release heat. Compress it more, and it will become hot enough to produce flame. And hotter still produces your lightning. Kallan grinned. Exactly. If you like this reading, I have many more. I also do a newsletter on YouTube. I encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel and or my website, where you will also receive monthly updates. And that's Peach in the back. She's like 22 years old. She's very old. All right, thank you, and I will see you next time on my reading. Thank you.